Outstanding. Good to see you again, Ryan.
It's good to see you. I feel like we've done this before.
We have. Not on this stage, though. So how many of you know Qualtrics out there or used it? I was like, this is...
We gotta work on that, right?
Yeah, penetration rate is low. But tell us a little bit about what you do, what it is, and then we'll go into talking about millennials, engagement, workforce.
Yeah, so at Qualtrics, we help the enterprise or businesses understand the vital signs of their organization. So if you look at, when you go to the ER, they tell you everything that's going on with your body. We do the same thing on your business, except for we focus on three main components. And we feel like if you understand these three components, it's pretty difficult to lose, which is how your customers feel about you, how your employees feel about you, and how your market feels about you or what you want to do next. And we're helping people gather data and become data-driven, and that's kind of our mission, is to dismiss the myths and actually use data.
So you were just talking backstage about how millennials are an important customer of yours because your product came out of academia. It was born out of a tool that researchers and professors use and graduate students use to figure out, sociology questions, psychology questions, and then they go to the workforce. They go work for, or they get their MBA, or they go to a big company, and then they say, hey, I want to use that thing I just used in college.
Yeah. So we started in the academic market. It's really not a sexy demographic to go after from a faculty research standpoint. You've got people who are extremely demanding and have no money and really want to do hard things. But we, in 2002, 2003, when we started, they were the only people that would use Qualtrics. And it's tough to predict virality, but they started sharing Qualtrics with their students. And the students actually, we have over 1 million academics on Qualtrics right now. And every year we get a new batch. And what happens is people realize how easy it is to collect data. These millennials are hands-on. They want to roll up their sleeves, and kind of a little bit, the only thing that they can do is use data to gain credibility, which is actually how it should be. And Qualtrics allows them to do that, and they take it with them into the workforce. And we've got phenomenal examples of where this has happened, where someone used it at the Kellogg Business School and took us into Heineken, or someone took us from Washington to Expedia, and globally, I think we almost have every business school in the UK and almost every university worldwide is on Qualtrics as kind of the gold standard. Mm-hmm. And the reason is the faculty can use it to do some of the most innovative research in the world, but it's easy enough that the students can use what the pros use. And that's kind of where the genius of Qualtrics is how do you build something that's super sophisticated but incredibly easy? And not very many companies can do that, and that's what we've been able to do. That's what Apple's been able to do, and I think that go-to-market from the students and the millennials taking to the enterprise is actually the future of how the enterprise is going to buy, and we're already seeing that.
So, but when it comes to questions like how do our employees feel, those are questions dealt with in like the HR department. Probably, talk about how, and then I would assume those people are older. Like they're the bosses, right? Because it's typically the bosses who want to know these questions. Well, yeah. So how does the kids coming out of school get the bosses to use this thing?
Well, I think as we do a lot of research and we're starting to see what's going on in the workforce, we're seeing a huge shift. So historically, that's been the case. Is someone's sitting inside a tech company, they've got a $50 million budget they're managing, they've got a double EE out of Cambridge or Stanford. They're managing a team. Their promotion path is on how well they can manage, how well they can metric, how well they can fire. But they can't assess their own team. They've got to wait for someone in HR to do that. The whole process is broken. It's very similar to what we saw in market research. In 2002, one group of the organization were the only ones doing this, and we believed, and we took a flyer early on, that was going to be the point where everyone was going to be an insight seeker. And so we want every single person who's managing a team within an organization to be able to get and give feedback with data to their folks. It's so much better to have a conversation when you have data and you're sliding data across this table, instead of saying, hey, my opinion is you're not bringing it.
Right.
No, it's actually, no, your peers say, and I believe you're not bringing it, and here's the data, and the person says, oh, wait a minute, I actually like my job because they give me feedback.
Well, that's Forbes, we write articles almost every week about what millennials want and what motivates them, and number one or two thing is always they want constant feedback because they're used to getting constant likes and favorites on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and that I assume that that becomes their mindset.
So think about this. Like you walk outside the doors of your office and you just share everything, almost too much to the whole world.
Right.
And then you go inside the building and it's like, okay, cell phone's down, put it in the basket, we're closed. Like transparency doesn't exist. And so that's where you get this great benefit if you're a company where people actually believe they can share. And we're seeing that comp isn't the driver, which it's always been, to people having, especially the younger generation, to having a great experience in the workplace. It's crazy. We've done so much research on this, and we're finding people want to do a tour, right? So I'm going to do a tour of Google, a tour of Facebook, a tour of LinkedIn, and I only plan on spending 2 years at each one, and we're going to diversify our stock portfolio by the time I go through all three. And so how do you understand the intentions of the employees that you're hiring? How do you motivate them? Yeah. And how do you get them to actually be engaged?
Well, should the expectation be that if you hire someone who's 23, that they're not going to be there by the time they're 30? I mean,
I don't think so. Mm-hmm. I think that you've got an uphill battle, and you better understand them, right? And you better understand what makes them tick. Mm-hmm. And the only way to do that is with data. I mean, ask them. You have to engage in them. You have to give them feedback.
Yeah. You also have to give them a career path, though. They think they want to know what the next step is, what the second step is.
Well, they'll tell you that. Mm-hmm. They'll tell you if that's the issue. Yeah. But it's a lot better than saying, oh, we think it's the 401k. Let's put $3 more million into the 401k when reality is all they wanted was bagels.
Right. So what is all this research that you're doing? I mean, I assume you have a lot of young people in your own company. Yeah. Everyone in Utah is under 40 anyway.
Yeah, we have a lot of kids there, so yeah. that streamlines.
So what does it say? Like, what are you doing? How are you dog fooding this whole theory at Qualtrics?
So the most important data that I've looked at within our organization was our employee engagement survey. The first thing I realized is one of my teams, who definitely is the lowest on the comp table, has the highest morale in our company, which is it blew my mind, because everything that we've been doing to overcorrect on comp is just like a losing battle a lot of times. And it was very clear that the manager or the boss of these individuals was the ultimate driver to the happiness of that team and the productivity of that team. So the number one thing that I'm focused on right now is, as we scale, we've gone from 500 to 1,000 employees. We've got 150 employees, or 100 employees here in Dublin. We'll be at 150, 200. Everything needs to be about these managers and the people who are going to manage these employees, because people quit their manager, not the company. And it comes out in our exit interviews. Every time someone leaves, it's like, I love Qualtrics, but.
Right.
Right? So how do you get 30 or 40 or 50 managers up to speed very quickly? And we're spending a lot of time doing manager training, bringing in experts, teaching people, showing them that's a career path, that everyone can manage someone. As we scale, if they have the skill set to do it.
What's the difference between a good manager and a bad manager? Or a good manager and a great manager?
I think the old school way of doing it is you had a boss. I think the new school way is much more of a coach. I think the number one thing that we're seeing is we have this principle at Qualtrics that you need to be a player coach, right? And no matter how hard a manager drives, if the manager is sitting next to the team driving with them, there's no resentment ever. All resentment comes when the manager is like, hey, we need to go do this, and we need to go climb this hill. However, I'm taking the 5 o'clock shuttle home, and you guys all need to stay and work later. Right. The us versus them. And I know that's a really simple practice, but we have 2 offices at Qualtrics. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone else is out in the open. And they're not out in the open because we want an open environment, because we believe that people need to work with the troops. And they need to be in the trenches with them.
What's your take on these like newfangled management theories like holacracy and where everyone is the same? And
we'll see how the movie ends, right?
Yeah.
I think it's an adjustment. Like anytime I mean, look, we're probably the most transparent company I know, where everything's open. And we've kind of grown up that way. I couldn't imagine, people always ask me about transparency within the workplace. And, what if you were like American Express or GE trying to implement transparency? That would be a huge shift. So the new holacracy thing, it's tough to really say how well it's working or not, because you're changing something at such a big scale.
Yeah.
If a company was growing up in that environment, I actually think they would think that was normal.
So talk about this transparency. Like how transparent are you with your employees? What is known? What's shared?
So pretty much everything but comp, but you can figure out the tables. So what everyone's doing, their expense reports, their paid time off. Basically, what we're trying to do is take everything that everyone would wonder about or get internally focused on, and make it available, and then tie all of our goals, all of our metrics, what everyone's going to do this week, also to this same system and make it available. So what we've done is we've made that, you come in on Monday, you get an email that says, hey, this is what you got done last week, what are you getting done this week? And then you type it in, and then it rolls up and sends out to the whole company. So everyone in my company knows I'm on stage right now, right? Everyone knows what else I'm going to do this week.
They see that your expense.
They see
how much you spent on a hotel.
They see everything that I do, and it's more of the player-coach model.
Can you see who's looking at all that stuff? Like, can you tell that someone's spending too much time obsessed with other people's expenses?
No, I mean, what we want is, like, think about it. We put 500 people on top of 500 people in 1 year. How do we get people up to speed quicker, right? How do we're hiring people to think, but we don't give them the data, right? We just expect them to know it. And, I think our business practices internally often reflect the 1970s and 1980s, where you're hiring people just to do one job. When Drucker was writing about all this stuff, the only thing close to what we're experiencing today was academia, because those people were paid to think. So nowadays, we need to, if we're going to hire people to think and basically get them a computer and say, go with God, like, you've got to give them the info to be able to do the job. Or they're just going to spin around and focus internally, and we believe the reasons why companies fail is because they're either focused internally on each other, or they're focused externally in a million different directions. So if you can line both of those up, I think you're going to see a lot of victories out there. And I think the number one fear for most of these unicorns and other companies is what's going on inside their building, not the market.
Right. So we face this problem all the time where we have the data, we obsess about traffic on Forbes, where people are coming from.
No, you guys don't do that, right?
We do? No, we do. The problem is it's shared, but most people don't know how to look at it. They don't know. They see it's usually a rearview mirror, like here's what happened last week or yesterday. That doesn't tell you like why that happened.
Yeah.
So I've been obsessed with getting more information about inputs rather than the outputs. And when you're new, you're fresh in the job, you don't really know like what makes the business tick like you do. You grow up in it. So everyone has to kind of become a data scientist, and that's not possible.
I don't think becoming a data scientist is possible for everyone. I think, we coined this term, insight seeker, which is you're going to have to have data fluency, and you're going to have to be data driven. And we believe, I get what you're saying. There's this whole big data initiative, and these organizations are trying to line up around it, but then you look at the 3 people who are tackling this problem, and it's like, wait, those 3 people aren't going to solve that issue.
Right.
Like, you can see it from a mile away. So what we've said is, wait, do you think we're overcomplicating this? What if the most important data for you is the data you don't have, right? So organizations go into a data problem and say, hey, look, these are the business questions I have, and they go run all of this regression on all this data they have, and they come out and they still don't know what they're going to call their new cruise ship, or they still don't know what the feedback was on a website. So if you look at like what we're doing with healthcare.gov, which is in the US, it's a pretty hardcore issue, right? We just simply took feedback links and put them at the bottom of every single web page. And we tied it back to the page and where people are clicking and what's going on. And then we have a dashboard that we can see where there's issues. So now for the first time ever, if there's an issue, they can see exactly where it's coming from and isolate it, and then look at the qualitative data that's coming in and before someone takes to Twitter. So I think we've made this over complex a little bit, where the lagging indicators or the rear view or exhaust data is not the problem. It's like, what if you could get the leading indicator, the vital signs, what's going on? And we believe with our technology that every company in the world can do this. And it's easy. And our job is, how do we lower that barrier to entry? So how do we take the sophistication and keep making it simple? So everyone in this room can be an insight seeker.
So when it comes to, again, millennials and the need for constant feedback, what are you building technology to do that? Like most companies, I don't know, how often do they assess their employees? Quarterly?
Yeah,
monthly?
not enough,
like,
because
you have a product where every single project has a...
we have what we call, like, we developed like the first ever insight platform, which handles your employee, your customer, and your market research all on one platform together. And it's enterprise professional grade, but it's easy. So if you want to do your employee surveys and your employee engagement, whether it's through an iPad or however you're going to do it, there's like 7 ways to do it. Our goal is that you can start doing that more frequently, right? Think about it. If I do it once a year and I doubled my company this year, there is half my company that hasn't gotten or given feedback. That's a problem. Because what's going to kill, what our biggest threat is and other companies' biggest threat is attrition. Attrition is killing companies. People go out to lunch and come back with a new job. And LinkedIn's a great part of that, which we love, but how do you help that? How do you fast forward that? And I think that that's the piece of this that is totally broken, and it's no different than what we saw in 2002 with the research world. So it's actually a pretty cool challenge. It's a tough challenge.
Right.
But look, we know how to grind, and that's what we were set out to do.
Why is everyone so fixated on millennials? I mean, are they any more valuable? Or, I know they're out there, and they're a large constituent.
I mean, I think people they over-fixate on a lot of things, right? I don't look at millennials specifically as like the age group or this or that. I've actually done it different. It's like, I look at it, is this person new school or old school? And it's just that simple. Because old school folks, which is what we described in the way we think about it, the way we think about feedback, that's the part that's changed. It just seems that millennials, the majority of them are more new school, but, you know, I've got a 65-year-old person that works at Qualtrics that has retired 3 times. It's probably more new school than most millennials.
Right.
And, you know, my father, who I started this business with, he's an early adopter, and he is more new school than most millennials, right? So I hate the thought that, hey, you've got to be a millennial to be successful, or you've got to do this. No, you actually have to be new school, and you have to study the way new school companies operate. Okay. You know, think about the sales process, right? You don't have the United, you know, whatever it is, frequent flyer showing up at your doorstep like we used to sell a product. Mm-hmm. You know, the way companies are buying are much more around the Slack and Tableau and Qualtrics, where they're coming in and landing and expanding, versus the IBM or Oracle where it's top down. It's just a fundamental change. It's a new school change. And we can either fight it, or we can say, wow, this is actually the way we buy. You know, someone tried to pitch Tableau to us, and our CTO said, no, we're not going to buy it. So what they do, they sold my marketing department a $10,000 license. They sold my finance department. Then they sold our sales department. Next thing you know, I bought a $300,000 Tableau license. Right. So that's the future. That's the way it's going to go.
Okay, we're out of time.
All right, man.
Thanks a lot.